Greg Koukl here for Stand to Reason. I was going to say, all right, friends, welcome to the show, but I say that every time, so I thought I'd just do something differently this time. But welcome to the show, and I am Greg Koukl. So there you have it. I was asked a question not too long ago about the nature of the soul and the body, and I actually chatted with my team about this a little bit during our staff meeting because it's such an important issue. And I think that Christians characteristically are not well equipped to respond. They know that humans having a soul is pretty essential to Christianity because if you're just your physical body, and that's what physicalists believe, even so-called Christian physicalists, I say so-called because I have a hard time being confident that a person who is a physicalist, that they believe that all that exists for a human is your physical body and that there is no interior self that survives the death of your body. I have a hard time being confident in my own mind that they're actually Christian. Now, I'm not going to say you're not really a Christian, and I'm not going to berate them or whatever for that, but I do take strong exception with this view. Because then there's not only biblical evidence that makes it clear that even though human beings are unified selves, they still have a material part, if you will, and an immaterial part. I mean, God doesn't have parts either, but he's still three persons. He's not made up of parts. He's not divisible, but he's one God with three persons. If we are comfortable with saying that kind of thing as Christians regarding God, why can't we be comfortable to say that there is a unified human being that is both physical and non-physical, body and soul? And that seems to be the plain, straightforward language of Scripture. Paul says, I was once kind of taken up to the second heaven or whatever, whether in the spirit or in the body, I don't know. Well, there can't be a distinction between the two if there isn't a distinction between the two, right? To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. This is one of those things where I think, why complicate things? This is pretty straightforward. This is pretty simple. This is pretty clear. Why are you denying what it seems to be obviously saying? Now, people can kind of give interpretations of those passages that end up supporting their view, but they strike me as not even being marginally plausible. Why don't you just hold the view that seems to be the most plausible given the plain sense of the Scriptures that speak to these things? Of course, there are a lot of things like that, and I scratch my head because I don't understand how people get off on some strange tangents. And if you're a teacher of Scripture, just teach the obvious stuff. Don't get creative. Don't speculate. Try to come up with something new, an inside look, hidden knowledge, or whatever. This is just going to get you in trouble. I just think it's obvious that Scripture teaches that there is a body and a soul. And it's not only obvious in Scripture, it is obvious in human life. Well, you can't see the soul. So what? There was an issue that was brought up once like that during a Q&A at a university in Georgia somewhere, I think. And after I spoke, there was Q&A, the question came up, and I asked the questioner, do you know what you're thinking right now? Yes. Which of your five senses is communicating to you the knowledge of what you're thinking? Are you seeing it? Are you smelling it? Are you tasting it? Are you touching it? Are you hearing it? No, 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 no. In other words, you know something, and probably you know it incorrigibly. That is, you know it without being mistaken. You can't think you're thinking about a hot dog and not be thinking about it. Okay? You know it incorrigibly, even though you're not knowing it by your five senses. That's because there are different faculties we have for knowing, and one of them is direct perception. We are directly connected to our own conscious states. And that's just one, I want to say evidence, but I have a hard time with that, only because it's, let me give you an evidence that you are conscious right now, and the consciousness that you are experiencing is not the same as your physical body, because it's obvious to everybody. When people say, look, I'm a woman in a man's body or a man in a woman's body, do you see the distinction that they're understanding that's implicit, that their womanhood or manhood is distinct from their physical body? Now, I'm not even sure if that assessment or their characterization of their self-identity makes much sense, but notice that what's entailed in that statement is the requirement that they are not their bodies, that they can be a different gender from the sex of their body. Or someone says, it's my body, I can do what I want with my body. Notice that the I is not the same as the body. The body is the possession of the I. They must be, of the self, they must be distinct things. When we go to sleep at night, we have dreams. Now, I guarantee you, in most cases, we are not in the slightest bit tempted to think that the things that we see in our dreams or experience in our dreams are things that really happened, that had any physical manifestation of any kind when, for the entire time, we were dreaming them. Because they're not physical. They don't show up anywhere in the physical world. Now, there may be things going on in my brain while in my mind the dream was happening. No one that I know of disputes that. Of course there's an interaction. I am making my lips move right now and making sounds with my voice that correspond to tokens that are part of a language in order to communicate information which itself is not physical. Okay, so my body's involved with my mind. So what? It doesn't mean my body is my mind. My mind is causing things to happen in my body. My body can cause things to happen in my mind. I can take drugs and hallucinate. All right? So there's an interaction back and forth, but doesn't mean they're the same thing. And they're obviously not the same thing. Now, biblically, it seems, now there's a little difference of opinion here, but it seems that the Bible gives a characterization of humans as a two-part thing. Absent any more sophisticated language here, we are physical and we are non-physical. We are mental and we have bodies and we have souls or minds or spirits. And here, though the Scripture defines two different types of substances, a material one and an immaterial one, the immaterial substance is variously called spirit or soul or mind. It isn't like we have a soul and we have a spirit. It's that the soul or immaterial self that we have has different capacities. It has mental capacities and it has spiritual capacities, which capacities are dead until there's a rebirth. Now, there are some people who believe that we are three parts, body, soul, spirit. That's not my view. It's not the standard view in Christianity. Even though once in a while you see the spirit and soul distinguished in language of the New Testament, even so, it's identifying distinct capacities, it seems to be, not separate substances, separate things, like your body's a thing and your soul is a thing. Your body's a material thing, your soul is an immaterial thing, but they are separate stuff. And we don't have a separate stuff that's a spirit. We have a soul that has spiritual capacities to know God and to function in a spiritual way and to be sanctified. So anyway, that's the way I would cash out the distinctions. And much more could be said about this. The most fascinating part of my master's, I think, now I'm reflecting for a moment, the most fascinating part of my master's degree education under J.P. Moreland and et al. I should say et al., not and et al., was the study I did on the mind-body problem. And that was really interesting. And not only was it interesting, as it massively expanded my capabilities to think carefully as a thoughtful Christian. Philosophy was a great help there. The mind-body problem, okay? So part of what I learned there helped me to navigate this whole issue where people are denying the existence of the soul. And one of the things that became obvious to me is that souls are obvious. And there's a very simple kind of illustration or exercise that I actually have audiences participate in. It just takes a few moments, actually. I have them close their eyes and imagine their mom doing some task, and then ask them what color is the shirt or blouse that their mother is wearing. Then I have them open their eyes, and then they tell me. And then I ask this question: where was that thing that you just saw? You saw something that was so vivid you could give me all the details of it, even the color of the blouse or shirt she was wearing. Where was that? It was real. You saw it. Now I have to put scare quotes around saw because we're using the sense of seeing here in a different sense than seeing with the eyes. But of course we use this all the time when we make reference to our mental perceptions. We use the sight language. And in this case, we saw an image in our minds, okay? And not only can we see things, but we could hear things in our mind. You can hear Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, or at least a portion of it. Did you just hear it? I did. Dun, 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 dun. But there was no music playing. It was just going in my head, as it were, in my head. But we don't mean in my head like my physical skull. We just are referring to ourselves that feels like is located in our head, but isn't, because our immaterial selves have no physical location. Because immaterial things aren't located anywhere. They're real. They're ill-local in terms of their presence. Their presence can be manifest, just like God can do things in our lives and make things happen and answer prayers and do things and make thunder crash if he wanted to and make the Red Sea part if he wanted to, etc. But that doesn't mean that he is physically in the earth, because he can't be, since he's not physical. So we are present to make things happen in this space, though it's an ill-local presence, it's not a physical presence. So people talk about demons, almost like if they're sitting on your shoulder or something. They don't sit on anything, nor do angels, because they don't have any physical location. They can manifest themselves in physical ways, but they have no personal physical location. So these are just some thoughts that I have that are basic things, and most of what I'm reflecting on doesn't require a degree in philosophy. Most of these things are like common sense if you haven't been talked out of it because you went to grad school. If you go to grad school, they're going to tell you to deny the obvious, and that happens in a lot of areas, not just in the mind-body problem, not the issue of consciousness. By the way, that's what we're talking about, the nature of consciousness. And, of course, Daniel Dennett is famous for saying, Daniel Dennett, one of the so-called new atheists who aren't new anymore, and he's famous for, in assessing the nature of consciousness, because it's not possible to reduce consciousness to something physical, he being a physicalist must therefore deny its existence. Pardon me for chuckling, but some of these things are silly. I'm not being derisive. I'm just saying that's crazy. No, he says that consciousness is an illusion. It's not really there. We're deluded in thinking. Wait. We are deluded in thinking because there's an illusion. So here's my question. What is an illusion? Now, he's saying that consciousness is an example of an illusion. What is an illusion? An illusion, one might say, is when your consciousness is being appeared to in a false way. That's the way J.P. Moreland would probably put it. I like that. When your consciousness is being appeared to in a false way, or that you're seeing something that's not there. But who's seeing it? It's your conscious self that's seeing it. In other words, purely physical objects don't have illusions, are not betrayed by illusions, subject to illusions, because there's no consciousness there. You have to be conscious to have an illusion. But if consciousness is the illusion, what is having the illusion of consciousness? Is the illusion having an illusion? Obviously, this makes no sense. This is incoherent. It's contradictory. It cannot be the case that consciousness is an illusion. But it just shows the extent that some will go to deny what's obvious. That consciousness is real. It's a real feature of the world, and it's not physical. It's a real, non-physical thing. It's ourselves. We are not physical. I think I recall J.P. Moreland saying that when his daughters were young, they were, I think, raising the issue of the existence of God because they can't see God. And he told his daughters, he said, honeys, you can't even see your mother. Which is true. They could see her physical body, but not her invisible self. We are invisible, and we possess a body. Much like, you put your hand in a glove. This is just an illustration. It's not proof of my point, but just to help you to see how it works. You put your hand in the glove. When you put your hand in the glove, the hand moves around. It does things. It does what you want it to do because your hand is, in a certain sense, animating the glove. You take your hand out of the glove, and the glove just lays there. That's what happens when you take the soul out of the body. The soul animates the body. You take the soul out, and the body just lays there. It's called dead. Now, the problem is that if somebody had gloves, now, this isn't a real circumstance. I was using this illustration for a 5-year-old trying to explain to him what a soul was, an invisible self, and it was kind of like a hand in a glove. And the body was the glove, and the hand was the soul animating the glove. But what I said to him is, if you had your gloves on all the time and no one ever saw your hands, it might occur to somebody, especially if they're younger, that maybe you didn't have any hands at all and maybe you were just all glove. But of course, the glove can't do what hands enable the glove to do. There must be hands. But this is a mistake people make when they see human beings, the bodies, the glove, and they don't see the soul that animates the body. They conclude that there must not be a soul at all. And that's a mistake. Why? Because we know better. We are more in touch with our souls than anything else in existence. Everything that we know and experience and believe is a function of our soul. And all the knowledge we gain about the physical world is mediated through our souls. That's how it comes to us, so to speak. So if we have no souls, there's nothing for us to be aware of, and there's nothing about us to be deluded by an illusion. Pretty common sense stuff. All right, let's take a break, and we got calls coming up on Stand to Reason. Time for calls, and I have someone here who's been very, very patient in Ohio, Maya. And Maya, thank you for your patience waiting over the break into the second segment. Nice to talk with you.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for picking up.
Sure. What's up?
I've been listening to your podcast for a while, and I just want to say thank you for growing my faith. And I've learned a lot through your podcast. I'm pretty new in the Lord, so I had kind of a simple question that I'm sure can be easily answered. But online I saw someone post about something that said, well, if God made us as humans, then why did he, in quotations, program or make it so hard for us to believe that he exists? And wouldn't he understand how our brains would interpret evidence, I guess, as plausible in our view? And if it's on the topic of free will, and I'm currently reading a book on existentialism, just because I really like to hear what, whether someone's an atheist or not, what their views are, and what they believe in and what their questions are.
Sure.
Something that was brought up in the book was, if I am in Christ, how do I trust my instincts being God or the devil or something else?
What was that last one? If I am what? In Christ?
So if I'm in Christ or if I'm a believer, how do I trust that my instincts are God or the devil or just something else?
Well, there's a lot here, okay? Really great questions. Glad to chat with you about this. But let me just go to the very first one, okay? Because this is a common concern that is raised by people, especially by atheists. If God actually exists, then why isn't there more evidence that he exists? All right, and in their mind, and this is like Bertrand Russell, who was a philosopher of the 20th century, a British philosopher. He said he was an atheist, and he said, "Why doesn't he believe in God? Not enough evidence. Not enough evidence." Now, this is a striking statement to me, because the evidence for God, it seems to me, is very powerful. But before I get into the details there, and quite compelling, I just want to make an observation, but let me make the point by asking you a question. Given the population of the world, make an educated guess here. What do you think the percentage of the world is that does not believe in God?
I would say, I'm not sure. It's pretty pessimistic, so probably like 40%.
That does not believe in God. That's actually probably rather high. The number of atheists in this country is between 2 and 4%. Let's just take America, for example.
Okay.
That's really small. Now, in Europe, because you have the influence of the, that particular culture, and existentialists and stuff like that, because a lot of the existential philosophers that you'll read came from Europe, the continent. You're going to have a higher number of people, much higher number of people who don't believe in God. When you have communist countries like Russia or China, you have a dogma that's taught, there is no God, okay? So you have it kind of pounded into them. However, when people are left to themselves, their natural response is to believe in God. In fact, there's an interesting study, and I don't have the footnote for you right now, the Bib source, but it's fairly well known in where this kind of thing is discussed, and that is that children of atheists have to be constantly reminded that God doesn't exist, because their natural inclination, when they look at the way the world is structured, is to believe that some mind is behind the structure. Now, what this is meant to speak to is this challenge: if there really is a God and God made humans, why did he make it so hard for them to know he exists? Apparently, it's not hard at all, because massive portions of the population, when you got 7 or 8 billion people on the planet, at least half of them believe in God. Now, the atheist would say, well, they're mistaken. There is no God. Well, that's not the discussion. The question is, if he does exist, why did he make it so hard? Well, half the population, and probably a lot more, of the planet didn't think that he's made it that hard. And it strikes me pretty obvious that he does, because of the nature of the world that we're in, which is exactly what the Bible says in Romans chapter 1.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you're familiar maybe with that verse 18 and following, okay? The truth of God is evident in what he has made, his eternal power and his divine nature. All you got to do is look around, okay? This is really obvious. So I don't cotton to the idea that God has made it so hard for us to believe in him. And I'll give you one example. Okay, this is a classic argument for the existence of God that I'm going to offer you, but I like it more than any other argument that I think the other evidences are really powerful. Let me introduce it with a question. If you think about it for a moment, Maya, what do you think is has historically, in a sense, been the most common objection to the existence of God?
Suffering.
Suffering and evil. It's not just suffering, because suffering, the point is that the suffering is a bad thing. It's not just that they're suffering, but suffering shouldn't happen. That's an evil. So we're just going to call it the problem of evil. But notice that in order to make that objection, the idea of what is good and evil has to be outside of us. We perceive that certain things are wrong. It's not just a matter of things we don't like, but things are actually wrong. Some rule has been broken when people do evil things. Now, the whole world knows this. Doesn't matter where you live or when you lived. Everybody knows something's wrong with the world. Okay, great. I got it. But that means that morality is objective in some sense. It's not just to make me up. If there's real morality in the world, which is testified to by the common concern about the problem of evil, then there must be some kind of ground or source for morality. It's like we have stop signs or speed limits. That's better. We have speed limits. There's the sign. That's how we know there's a speed limit, but that's not what set the speed limit. What set the speed limit? The government set the speed limit. So we can see speeders breaking the limit. Oh, there he just went by. He wasn't going 35. He was going 50 at least. He broke the law. So we can know they broke the law. But then we have to ask, that's the problem of evil by parallel. But then we have to ask the question, where did the law come from that we are obliged to keep, but don't when we do evil in the world? There's got to be a lawmaker. And that's the moral argument for God. So what I'm offering you is an argument for God's existence. And by the way, that's one of the most airtight. The problem of evil makes it clear that there's evil in the world. People know that. And that's because objective moral obligations have been violated to create the evil. But where do those obligations come from? Where do those rules come from? Okay, that's God. There's not any other source. It's not going to come from evolution. That gives you relativism, not objective morality. So that's the answer. There's got to be a God. Now, why is that hard to figure out? We all know there's a problem of evil. That's because things ain't right. It ain't the way it's supposed to be. Well, you can't have a way it is supposed to be unless there's a sposer.
Right.
Right? Okay, why is that so hard? Oh, God made it so hard for us to know he exists. Look at it. Every time you complain about the problem of evil, you are implicitly acknowledging the existence of a divine lawmaker who gets disobeyed when there's evil. Well, I don't know what the British Bertrand Russell, philosopher, thought about that. I know what other atheistic philosophers thought. Evil's just an illusion. Really? Yeah, when we say something's bad, we're just kind of emoting. It's called emotivism. Yeah, we're going, I don't like that. Rape, No, I think rape is wrong. Even if people like rape, like the rapist, doesn't make it right. So how is it that these guys, can look at the evil in the world and complain about the evil in the world and say there is no God because there's evil in the world, and then they don't try and make any attempt to make sense out of the evil in the world as an atheist, which they can't do, in my view.
Right.
So I guess I'm just blathering on here a little bit by kind of making the point that there are lots of good reasons to actually believe that God exists. And it strikes me that the odds-on favorite is God, and there's a number of different lines of thinking that leads me to that conclusion. And it's not that hard. That's why the vast majority of people in the world believe in God, because in their minds it's pretty obvious. Now, it doesn't mean that the vast majority are right. Somebody say, oh, that's argumentum ad populum. You're just appealing to the masses. I'm not just appealing to the opinions of the masses. Remember, the objection is, why did God make it so hard for people to know he exists? And all I'm saying is, it looks like there's a whole lot of people that don't think it's hard at all, that the existence of God is obvious. You don't have to go looking for him, and really, in strange places. When I, let's see, how old was I? I was 22 years old. I left Michigan, drove to the West Coast. I first lived in Berkeley. And I was thinking about the issue of God. And I said, well, if there is God and there is a true religion, the secret of it must be in some old musty book that somebody never reads. It must be in some kind of strange place, and I've got to go to an ashram and get the real truth about religion. Why would I think that? That would be God hiding. But on the Christian view, God's not hiding at all. He's right out in the open. That's why we can give so many reasons why we think that God is the best explanation for the way things are. He's not hiding.
Right.
Make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Now, did you have another nuance there about something about free will or about existentialism?
I think you answered it. It was more about like our instincts. If we know what our instincts are telling us, if that's just human error or if that's God or if it's, the devil. I think that's something that's also a little confusing that
okay, so
I
when
think a philosopher brought up.
Got it. Okay, so good. I'm glad you brought that up again because I wanted to offer some thinking on that. When you say instincts, you mean what?
I guess, when I'm like new in the faith, so I'm not really sure. I guess saying the word right is even correct. But when you pray to God about something and you pray to, you don't really physically hear his voice. I know that's not how it works. But you can hear, it's kind of hard to explain where you don't know if the instincts that were given to you, if you prayed to God, were from God,
sure,
or if it's the devil.
Okay,
or
I gotcha.
Your
I actually understand you much more than you think I do.
Sorry,
and that's no worries here. But there is a whole bunch of people listening here that are kind of chuckling because they know what I'm about to say. Mm-hmm. That I do not think biblically, and I'm being very careful how I'm using my words, that the Bible gives us any reason to expect we are going to get private messages from God. Although that's the way almost all evangelical Christians talk. I think that's a huge mistake. I've written quite a few things about it, and I am going to probably, I haven't said this publicly, but I've been thinking, just between you and me, of this being my next book. All right, just finished one, just came out in September, Street Smarts. And right after you're done with the book, you think, I'm never going to do that again. But I am thinking about it. And the working title is Does God Whisper? Because that's the question. Is it God nudge, nudge, hint, hint me right here? Or is that just me? Or is that the devil or whatever? And my understanding of the Bible is that that's not a question that needs to be asked. Because if God is going to say something to you, he's going to speak clearly. And this is exactly what happened in the book of Acts. Every single time that God spoke, so to speak, it only happened 14 times in the book of Acts in 30 years that we have a record of. Mm-hmm. And every single time that we see that, where we're given now I'm going to use a fancy philosophical word here, okay, that I paid a lot of money to be able to say. But when we see that the phenomenology, that is the way it appears to the person who is receiving that revelation, is always supernatural. When we know the phenomenology, it's supernatural. There are no nudge, nudge, hint, hint, whisper, whisper in the book of Acts. Angels show up. Jesus shows up. There's a vision. There's a dream. Somebody's being physically transported by the Holy Spirit. A prophet is speaking. These are the ways that God is speaking in the book of Acts. He speaks clearly. Mm-hmm. He doesn't do the hint, hint, nudge, nudge. But I'm glad I got you early, young Christian. I'm going to save you from a lot of headache.
Right.
This is the way Christians talk, and they are very committed to this view that God gives all these little messages to every Christian. The Bible does not teach that. And I know every verse virtually in the entire Bible that people have used to verify this, and all of the verses that they are using, they are taking out of context. It is not what the writer had in mind when he originally wrote it. Whether it's being led by the Spirit in Romans 8 or Galatians 5, whether it's having a peace about it in Colossians 3, whether it's open doors and closed doors at the end of 1 Corinthians, the beginning of 2 Corinthians, all these different things are not understood by the writers to be hints by God, who's trying to nudge, nudge, hint, hint, his decision for you about what he wants you to do. He has given us the Bible and other Christian brothers and sisters to help us make wise decisions and to know right from wrong. And so we don't have to divine or discern whether this thought that came into our head, is that God or is that me or is that the devil? If it's wrong, don't do it. If it's stupid, don't do it. If it's smart and wise and good, then go ahead. You don't need God's permission. People say, if you feel led, you can sign up to help with the hunger stuff that we're doing in the local community. Well, wait a minute. Can I sign up even if I don't feel led by the Spirit? Do I have to have permission from God to do something good? No, you don't need permission from God. This is a whole, there's a lot I could say about this, but I'm just giving you a little bit. And at Stand to Reason, we have some training and teaching on decision-making in the will of God. You can find it on our website. There's also a series of articles I wrote on our website titled, Does God Whisper? And my answer is no.
Right.
He doesn't whisper. If he wants to tell you something, he's not going to give you jumbled language. He's going to tell you straightforward. That's the testimony of Scripture. But that will give you more substance if you want a little more detail. There's also a booklet that we have called The Ambassador's Guide to the Voice of God. Is that right, Amy? Yeah, that's it. And so, which really is those articles on God, Does God Whisper, that's been put into book form, a booklet form. So you can get it either way. If you get it in the articles, it's free. You can get the booklet if you want to because it's all together there. But that'll give you a little bit more understanding. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about the God talking. Learn to make good decisions from Scripture and based on the advice of more mature believers.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
I just wanted to clear that up after reading it in a book. And I knew it sounded kind of weird, so I just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah,
so
well,
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, Maya. And I think biblically it is unusual, but most Christians do not think it's weird. And if you tell your Christian friends what I just told you, they're going to say, he's wrong. But if you go back to the text, and that's what I do in all the writings, let's look at each individual verse. You're going to see that it doesn't teach what people think it teaches. Being led by the Spirit is not getting a nudge, nudge. That's not what Paul means by the phrase, and he's the only one who uses it, and he uses it in two places, Romans 8 and Galatians 5. What he means is overcoming the flesh by the power of the Holy Spirit, doing good things, putting to death the deeds of the flesh, that kind of thing. Well, there you go. You got a lot to think about, Maya. Thank you for calling, and I hope to chat with you again, okay?
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
All right. Bye-bye now. All right, let's take a break, and then we'll get on with our final call with Ryan in Morgan Hill, California. Just a reminder here that we have this year, starting January here, we have 2 new SDR University courses available. And Tim Barnett, a.k.a. Mr. B, is teaching on reaching the next generation, really critical issue. A lot of youth pastors should watch this and hear what Tim has to say. He's got great understanding. He is the co-author with Elisa Childers of The Deconstruction of Christianity, being released January 30th this month. We got to have Tim on. We got to schedule him soon after release, Amos, and we'll talk about his book. Or Tim and Elisa, I don't know, probably Tim's easier because Elise is pretty busy. She just put out, I think she just put out an album. Yeah, so wow. She's an incredible YouTuber, but she was also formerly a member of the group Zoe Girls, and now she's still got her wonderful gift that she's using, recording. Her father, Chuck Girard, of the groundbreaking Christian group way back in the Jesus movement when I first became a believer, Love Song. So she's got it in her genes, or she's got it in her soul, however that works, but she's got it. So we'll probably just have Tim on. But the other course, Reaching the Next Generation, Tim Barnett, the other one is titled Transgenderism, Truth and Compassion. This is a theme with Alan Schliemann, who is the teacher of this course. He specializes in these areas that in any of these sexual issues that get addressed, there's always needs to be truth and compassion. Jesus came, John says in John chapter 1, full of grace and truth. It wasn't just grace. It wasn't just truth. It was grace and truth. And this is the idea of truth and compassion, that we can go and address these issues. And Alan brings his expertise to bring tremendous amount of insight and understanding to the issue. Training.str.org is the place to go to for those classes. All right, let's go to Ryan. And Ryan, Morgan Hill, California. Where is Morgan Hill, Ryan?
Hey, Greg. Yeah, it's actually just a little bit. It's basically the next city north of Gilroy, which you go on to pretty much, for a while now, last 2 years. I unfortunately missed you the last time you came up. I really want to go if you do come up again this year.
Yeah.
It's only about a 15-minute drive away. So
okay, I think that I've logged 26 summers with them or events with them.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I got a plaque after 20 years, or maybe it was 25. They gave me a plaque, and they keep inviting me back. So I did miss 1 year or maybe 2 because of scheduling. But, yeah, that's been a great relationship there. And that's where that other famous city is. Where's that other famous city? It's on everybody's T-shirt. What is that?
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about. It's on the T-shirts.
Yeah.
It's actually a brand that has the same name as the city.
Oh. I'm drawing a blank
Amy,
right now.
all right, Amy will probably think of it. What is that city around Gilroy that's actually a brand of a clothing? Oh, I think, okay. Hollister, there it is.
Oh, Hollister. Oh,
yeah, because I taught at Hollister
that.
once. Yeah, and I said, you guys are famous. Man, I was in Europe, and I saw your T-shirts. Man, your city's famous. Anyway, Hollister. All right, so from the ridiculous to the more sublime, hopefully, what's on your mind?
Yeah. Oh, man, I can't believe I didn't think of Hollister.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those crazy things.
So, yeah, we probably only have time for one question, but the first question I had was kind of a philosophical issue that sometimes I'll see it online when people make arguments for Christians, make arguments for God's existence. I notice a lot of skeptics and atheists will kind of level a informal fallacy against people making arguments called special pleading. And I don't really know a lot about special pleading. I think I looked it up once on Wikipedia.
Yeah, and I've actually looked. I've actually looked it up a couple of times because I had one understanding about it, and then I think maybe the definitions gave me another understanding. At first, I thought, and maybe there's an element here of that, is when you give all the evidence for one side of the view, but you don't give any evidence for the other side because you don't think it's relevant, okay? But I actually think, and I was just talking with Amy about it too, I think special pleading is more when there seems to be a kind of rule governing something, maybe a rule of thinking or whatever, a line of thinking, and a person is advocating for a position contrary to this rule and is saying, well, that rule doesn't apply to me. That line of thinking or that objection, that doesn't apply to me for some ad hoc reason. And when you say ad hoc, that means for this, and it sounds like you're just making it up. You're making up an excuse to excuse the behavior or the line of thinking when, in fact, there is other information that would disqualify your view, but instead you're doing special pleading regarding your view. And I can't actually give you an example of it right now, but if you go to Google and just Google special pleading, you'll see some examples of it. And it may be that sometimes they'll give you religious examples. Christians say this, but that's special pleading. By the way, I have this is called an informal fallacy. Okay, an informal fallacy is a fallacy that's not tied to an errant form of the argument. Does that make sense? So you can have deductive arguments that have to follow a certain form in order to be legitimate, or I should say valid type arguments. Yeah, the form is right. But these are problems that don't fall in the category of form. They're just mistaken. When, like a straw man, right? So if I said, here's what people say: why would God send me to hell just because I don't believe in him? Okay, that's a fallacy, because that isn't why God sends people to hell. But they've misrepresented the Christian view. That's an informal fallacy. And so in the same way, this special pleading is another example of an informal fallacy. Okay. And sometimes, people are going to be accused of special pleading when in fact it's not a fallacy of special pleading. So you just have to look at the details carefully to see if that's what's going on.
I see. Yeah. I was thinking another informal fallacy that's common among actually atheists is the genetic fallacy.
Yes.
You see that a lot. I remember watching a little bit of a debate William Lane Craig had with someone. I mean, Craig just destroyed this guy, but he just made all these genetic fallacy arguments. And like when they turned to Craig was just like, I can't believe how many genetic fallacies you just
committed.
Said right there. Yeah.
Well, when an atheist said, you're a Christian because, well, this is actually a good illustration because it makes another point. We can get to your California political change question in a moment. But when people say something like, well, you're a Christian because you were born in America. If you were born in Saudi Arabia, you'd be a Muslim. So there. Well, that proves nothing. All that it might tell you something accurate about geography and anthropology and culture, but it doesn't tell you anything about whether Christianity is true or false relative to Islam being true or false. They could both be false. One could be true and not the other. It's irrelevant what is the motivation, the cultural motivation for someone to believe. The truth of the proposition is irrelevant to that. That's why it's called a genetic fallacy, because it is faulting the view for its genesis, its origin. It comes from, you're a man, so what do you have to say about abortion? Genetic fallacy. Okay, now here's another example where I was accused of making a fallacy that wasn't a fallacy. And the fallacy of accusation it's called tu quoque. And tu quoque simply means you too. Okay, well, you lied. Well, you lie too. Well, I mean, that doesn't rescue you from the charge against you when you say you too. And so I was accused of doing the tu quoque fallacy when I said regarding this issue, you're a Christian because you were born in this country. If you were born in Saudi, you wouldn't be a Christian. You'd be a Muslim. To which I respond, if you were born in Saudi, you wouldn't be an atheist. And, you too. No, that's not you too. I'm not just pointing the finger and say you too. I'm saying if your line of thinking works to subvert Christianity, it equally works to subvert atheism. But it doesn't work to subvert either of them because in both cases, it's a genetic fallacy. So, but this guy thought he was onto something, and he's a pretty bright guy too, as I recall. And he posted this thing and the tu quoque fallacy, and he's all over me on here. And he just didn't understand the point I was making. I wasn't saying it's okay for me, but not for you, or vice versa. I'm just saying this is not a good argument. It's fallacious, and it's fallacious when I do it. And if it works against you. but it doesn't work against you because it doesn't work against me. What's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander.
Yeah. That should be called the schoolyard fallacy, just because, like, you too.
Yeah, well, that's a good
Not
one.
me.
So there, take that.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're ugly, you know.
Exactly.
Okay, what's the second issue? We've got about 4 minutes to go here. What's this? Or maybe 3.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. So, I mean, we're both native Californians, and you know, with this state, it feels like, I mean, we're so far left here that I just feel like voting isn't really gonna make a big difference in terms of like affecting what I would think is positive change. Obviously, a lot of people here would disagree with. They think a lot of positive things are happening here, but I don't. So I know obviously we can pray for our leaders, and but what are other things we can do to make, just affect kind of positive change?
Sure.
It just seems like, it seems like Senator Scott Weiner's pushing bills every other week.
Yeah, I know.
It's signed to get.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Now you can't put food in your trash can.
Right, exactly.
You can't put food waste in your trash can. I mean, like, are you kidding me? Okay, so quickly. I think your point is a good one. The state of California is not likely to be changed by any human effort. For when those things are left to human effort, God leaves it to human effort to accomplish something else. There's some things that we just aren't going to be able to do. I mean, think of Dietrich Bonhoeffer against the Third Reich. Bonhoeffer and the church were not able to change the Third Reich. That took a whole world war to rectify that problem, okay? It was not in their control, and many things are not in our control. We can pray, and we ought to pray, but that doesn't mean that God is going to change things in as a consequence of our prayer. But if you want to make the biggest impact, the more local you get, the bigger the impact you're going to have because of the numbers. You can be one of 20 million, I don't know what the population of the state of California is, or you can be one of 20,000. Well, when you're one of 20,000 or 5,000, depending, in your community. The place to have the biggest impact is in local elections. I think everybody should vote across the board for everybody. Just do it. But it's going to have the biggest impact in local elections, and that's the area where more conservative people can get voted for and get office and have an impact where you live. I mean, it's the single most important thing. 30 seconds and we're done here. But that's one thing. That's if you focus on the local circumstances, because that's going to make the biggest difference.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're getting a new Chick-fil-A here in Morgan Hill. It hasn't been built yet, but one of our council members was he was upset because of Chick-fil-A, the history, and they always call like they were anti-LGBTQ.
Yeah. Well, they've softened on that a little bit, but that's right. Yeah. So they don't like them. So okay, well, why should somebody not be allowed to apply their business because that company doesn't agree with some people's politics? That to me is a specious concern. So anyway, there you go. That's my quick advice for California. You're not going to change the state. You might change your community. Thanks for the call, Ryan. Appreciate that. Thanks to the rest of you, your time with me, listening, calling in, giving your 2 cents, as it were, allowing me to give you a piece of my mind in return. Greg Koukl here for Stand to Reason. Give them heaven, friends. Bye-bye now.